against all ungodliness and wickedness of men, who by their wickedness suppress the truth. Now, what truth might that be? Good question. I'm glad you asked. The truth that God exists. For what can be known about God is plain to them, and let's be clear, them is everybody, because God has shown it to everybody, namely his eternal power, his divine nature. Hold on to this one. His invisible attributes have been clearly perceived, clearly seen, ever since the creation of the world and everything that has been made, so that you, sir, have no excuse. Neither do I. Nobody does. Now, how do you
It,
make your God, how do you make your invisible attributes known to your creation?
Yeah, but
Invisible
Batman, you've
attributes can't
completely
be seen.
ignored the question.
I knew that, sir. Yep, that's quite true. But
Well,
how do you
I'm
make them? I didn't say they could be seen; they could be perceived. How do
Yeah,
you make them perceived? And again, when
they
you
can't be.
perceive them, one of the things you are doing is you are seeing them. You are using them for sight. Did
I
you know that? That without God's invisible attributes, you wouldn't be able to see?
What's the argument for that?
Okay. In order to have the ability to have sight, would you agree, sir, that you'd have to have cause and effect relationships?
With certain parts of biology, sure.
No, sir. It is either true that you have to have cause and effect relationships or it's not. That's called the law of the excluded middle, which again is another law of logic which you have to have in order to know things to be true. So, once again, these are laws that never change over time. Not only do you have to have laws of cause and effect, but you have to have the law of identity. Without the law of identity, which is eternal, universal, and unchanging, that states that A is A, something is what it is, and it cannot be what it is not, guess what? Then you don't get classifications of things, categories, or labels. So, without the law of identity, you don't get a classification of thing called a photon. And that photon cannot affect another classification of thing called your retina, sending another classification of thing called a signal to the fourth classification of thing called your brain. I'm
may,
sorry, I'm working. Please hang on just a second.
may I?
Again, and then you have the fifth classification of thing, which is what you are thinking. Your ability to
May I?
think is also a classification of thing. So all of these require cause and effect. All of these requires the law of identity. All of these require the law of non-contradiction because you have to be able to compare and contrast these from one another. And you have to have the law of the excluded middle as well because it's either true that this works this way or it's true that it doesn't.
Okay,
May
and
I?
how is that
May
relevant?
I happen? May I?
Okay, where does laws of logic come from so you can have
Can,
classifications of things?
can
I've told
anybody
you
hear
this
me?
multiple times.
yeah,
They
we
don't
can
have
hear
to
you,
come
but you
from
cannot.
anywhere.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah.
Do laws of logic exist?
Necessarily so.
I just want to
Yes.
say that
So
I
laws
love
of
the
logic necessarily exist, but they cannot come from the
May,
physical world. Do laws of logic ever change?
may,
No, they're eternal and unchanging.
Great.
stop.
They're eternal and unchanging. So
may
guess
I
what? I
hop?
don't know, honey. I don't have any other pens. So you're just
Tommy, just chill out. I hear you say "may I" like 30 times so far.
okay.
Mr. Batman,
Now,
there is another person with a question whenever you're ready to take it.
one moment, let me finish what I'm saying here. The fact of the matter is you have these eternal, universal, and unchanging laws, which you admit they exist. You must have them in order to have functionality in the physical world. But wait a minute, they cannot come from the physical world because the physical world is constantly changing over time. That's called thermodynamics or entropy. Now, since the physical world cannot be the cause of these laws that don't change over time, where do they come from? Let me help you. They're
Mr.
called
Batman, they don't
metaphysical
come from
laws. They're
anywhere.
called supernatural laws. They come from a natural lawgiver. Do you believe in magic, sir? They just don't come from anywhere. They just poof into existence by themselves?
They're eternal. They don't come
I'm
anywhere.
sorry, sir. Do you believe in magic? Yes or no?
This is a red herring. It doesn't matter. They don't come from anywhere.
Have a nice day, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
Refute the
You're.
argument.
Can I?
Refute the
All right,
I
argument.
just did.
we have
You
another.
believe,
didn't.
you believe in magic. You're too stupid to have the conversation.
I didn't say
Repent or
that. This
perish,
is a
sir. You're on your
straw
way to
man.
hell. Next.
This is a straw man.
Hold on,
They're
Batman.
eternal. They don't
Batman, let
come from
me.
anywhere.
Batman, let me give him a chance to shore up his argument. Daddy Smoke, you're just saying they're eternal. They don't come from anywhere. What sort of point are you trying to make with that?
He said they're eternal. He
Yeah,
said
no,
that.
but you said you're.
Yeah, you both
Make
did.
your point.
Yeah, we agree with that. So if they're eternal, they don't come from anywhere. That's my point.
What?
Hearing him, Batman?
Nope, I muted him.
Oh shit.
Then stop trying to debate with the person
I've-
you muted. I
I've
feel like that's
noticed
pretty
there's
obvious.
there's
If all he's going to
trend
do
here.
is believe in magic, why debate with
That's what
somebody who
you're saying.
believes in
Okay.
This is
magic?
a
He has
straw
no
man.
justification for
Oh,
any
This is a
argument he's
straw
claiming.
man.
Poof, it just
Call the
happened.
coward.
Poof, it's
This
just
is a
there. I don't need a
straw man.
reason
I'd
why
fight
it's there.
me,
It's just
Batman.
there.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's stupidity at its finest.
Stop
You
straw
know what?
man.
I work with special needs children, but I ain't going to work with somebody that's that special needs.
This is a
Can
straw
I-
If I
man.
may, if I
Dan.
may,
Unmute me, you're a
Eastern
coward.
Everyone,
Orthodox is
shush,
the most
shush.
legitimate form of Christianity.
Okay, so to start with, his point that it's a straw man is true. His point was that they're eternal. They don't need to come from anywhere because they have always been there. Your argument is that a different eternal force is the origin of them.
Has the
where did that
universe always
eternal-
been there, sir?
Yeah,
No, it hasn't. Have you ever heard of the first and second laws of thermodynamics? Did I mention I'm a science
Well,
teacher?
it depends what you define as the universe. The things
No,
in this
sir.
space
No, you don't get to define the universe. Did I mention I'm a science
Exact-
teacher and definitions mean things in science?
Mr.
Oh,
Batman,
wow.
what's
word
the extent of your
universe,
science
uni
education?
means single, like unicorn, unicycle means single. Verse is a spoken sentence.
universe
So,
could refer
God
to
created everything in a single spoken sentence. That'll preach right there, boys and girls.
He
Right
created them
there
over 7
is
days.
all of the cosmos. Now, since the universe is constantly decaying over time, it's constantly dying over time. This is called the second law of thermodynamics. That tells us that everything was originally wound up with the least amount of entropy, and then it is winding down to the maximum amount of entropy. That's heat death. You can Google this if you like, sir.
I'm
As a matter
aware
fact,
of
I
that
would
whole
prefer if you didn't
concept.
trust me. I would love for you to look this up yourself. Now, since everything is dying, it means it had a beginning. What caused all time, space, and matter to begin?
Death.
Could you just listen and let me finish my thing? To start with, there's also the whole concept of... Have you ever heard of the concept of a virtual particle?
Sir,
That is a
have you ever heard of the
virtual-
concept of science, observable, testable, repeatable, operational, demonstratable
virtual
science?
particles
That's
is
what I teach. Now, sir, what we're talking about right here is the fact that all time, space, and matter decays over time. Everything is going through entropy, also known as thermal equilibrium, because that's why it's called heat death. Everything will come to a point in our universe of heat death. That means it
Of
all had a beginning.
unchanging.
Let me show you a very simple
I'm
experiment.
aware
sir,
of how the
that
heat death
even
works.
you can understand. Okay, you ready for this?
I'm
Let me
aware
show
of
you
how
this.
the heat death of the
fact
universe and
matter
not
is,
theory.
If you take a cup of steaming hot coffee
Oh
and
my
you put that cup
God.
of steaming hot coffee in the middle of your coffee table,
the heat
and then
spreads
walk
out.
away
Yeah,
for
you're not
3
making a
hours,
point with that.
What
You're not
happens
making
to
a
the
point with that.
temperature of the coffee in the coffee cup, sir?
It goes to its surroundings.
I'm sorry, sir. What would that be called? It becomes closer to room temperature. It won't be
equals
completely
out.
at room temperature within 3 hours. It
equals
takes
out.
a lot longer than that. But the longer
But-
that those two things are in the same environment,
The closer they get, yes,
they will become to what's called thermal equilibrium, until you get to a point where there is no
Can I-
measurable difference between the
Can I-
coffee in the coffee cup and the room temperature. That's when you say the
Can I make a
coffee
full
has
point
reached
without you
room
interrupting me?
temperature. This is called thermal equilibrium. It's true of everything.
You're repeating
in the
yourself
physical
over and
world.
over and over.
Now,
Shush.
would you agree that that big yellow shiny ball in the middle of our solar system, we call that the sun? Would you agree, sir, that that sun is much hotter than this lovely blue ball that we live on? We call it the Earth. Would you agree there's a huge temperature difference between those two things?
I can't answer because anytime you...
Would you
I
agree, sir,
do.
that there's a huge temperature difference between the
I'm
sun and the
expressing
earth.
that I
Would you agree
can't-
with that, sir? Yes or
I'm
no?
I think
ex-
Mr. Batman is fake.
Can we-
Okay.
If Tommy answers, can he flesh out
Okay.
his point? I'd
So
like to hear it.
Okay. You're not going to talk to me. I just won't talk
No,
to you either,
I'm
sir.
trying-
The
I'm
fact of the matter
trying
is,
to.
because
I'm trying
there
to.
is
You're
a
not
huge
letting me.
temperature difference between the sun and our planet, that proves without a shadow of a doubt that those two things could not have been in the same environment for an infinite amount of time in the past. So you know what that tells us? That tells us that the universe could not have been here for an infinite amount of time in the past. If you use the Hubble Deep Space Telescope, you look anywhere in our universe, you're going to find huge patches of differences in temperature. Why? Why is that? If the universe had been here an infinite amount of time in the past, there should be no temperature differences between things. We should be at thermal equilibrium, because if we had been here an infinite amount of time in the past, we've had plenty of time for all that heat to dissipate, and we would be at heat death. But that's not the case. So that's just one more evidence that the universe was created
Am I
a
muted
short
by him too
period
for
ago.
trying
Less than
to
10,000
make a
years,
point
actually.
and him refusing to let me talk?
So,
Am I
Mr.
muted?
Batman.
Mr. Batman,
Yes.
there are a couple of people who are getting frustrated that want to actually talk to you. I'm not sure if you have them muted. If it turns into like a yelling match or anything untoward, we will definitely make sure that we sort it out. But Tommy Kong would like the opportunity to reply without being interrupted. Do you agree to something like that?
No, sir, because he's been interrupting me since the moment I started talking. So that's why I muted him. First, I just lowered his volume, because every time that
Right.
way, when I could continue to talk, I could hear his replies without being interrupted because I had his volume lowered. But he
Gotcha.
kept on doing it, and there was no moderation. So now I have him completely muted. I'm not interested in talking to that turd. Flush, you're gone.
We do try to warn them because this will happen. But just try not to interrupt, and we'll try to get you in there for sure.
I won't
Jack.
interrupt him, sir.
Mr. Batman,
Carry on
why
the
does the
fight.
cause of the universe have to be God?
Jack, call him a fake Protestant, a fake Christian. Do it.
Does he have
Whoever
me
asked
muted?
that question, what
Can
else is this?
Does he have me muted?
Okay,
No,
so
but everybody keeps jumping in. Like, are we sticking with one question for him, or is everybody just going to go around the room and like jump on him like a rock star?
I have a question.
I have a
I
I'm
have
used to that
so many
too.
issues with this discussion because I can't contribute because I've been muted by the person
But
I'm
you
trying
kept interrupting. Like, you kept going, hey,
I
hey, like
I
what?
was
Nobody else was
trying to
doing
inter-
that.
Mr.
I was
Batman was
trying to
interrupting.
interject. I was trying to do that right as someone else started. I was trying to cut him off before.
Like, we know
That's
that
what
you
that
want
was
to get
always
in.
doing.
We'll get you in, but you guys keep trying to slide in there.
I was trying to. Okay, whenever
And
that
there's all these,
happened, whenever I said
there's like
that,
these weeb PFPs popping
Maybe
up.
staff
Everybody
should
wanting
do
to
their
jump
job.
in.
whenever I had said, "Can I was trying to not have someone else start. That was what it was. I was trying to get in there before anyone else.
Yeah, that
I was trying to
obviously
be
that's
polite.
not working, right? It's not working.
I was trying to be polite. That's what that is.
What
That's
is your question
generally
to Batman?
considered polite.
Do you want me to give him a question, or do you want me to ask if he could unmute you?
I have so many parts of this that I would need to
I'm
be
sorry, sir. I
unmuted
was
fully.
talking to my granddaughter. What did you say?
But
Mr. Batman, would you be willing to unmute Tommy Kong for a period of time and see if he can make a point to you?
Well, since you asked me so politely, sir, I will do it for you. But I'm going to guarantee you this. The first time that turd speaks over me, I'm going to mute him, and we're going to go right back to Flushville for him.
Will you allow him to speak and not talk over him?
Well, absolutely. I've been doing that, sir.
All right. Go ahead, Tommy.
okay. So before when I was doing May I, that was me trying to get in.
Please don't
without-
talk about trying to interrupt.
Okay.
Just get to your point.
Okay. To start with, your point originally about these laws exist, so they need to come from somewhere elsewhere. That's why can't those laws be that elsewhere? Those laws could be in place of a god easily, and it would make just as much logical sense. Those laws do not need to come from anywhere else any more than a god needs to come from somewhere else. It doesn't logically have any consistency.
Are you done, sir?
Yes. On
Great.
that.
Where does logic come from so you cannot have any logical consistency? Because you just use the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, and the law of excluded middle and a fallacy to begin with. You use a fallacious argument. You're saying that these things don't have to come from anywhere, but I have to have them. I'm sorry, sir. That's called a self-refuting argument. That's a fallacy. Now, where do laws of logic, what causes them to be? Let's fashion everything in a cause and effect relationship, because everything in our universe works under the law of cause and effect. What causes these laws of logic to be in our physical world? That's number one. What causes these laws of logic not to change in our physical world that is constantly changing over time? That's number two. And what's going to cause these laws of logic to be here again tomorrow, unchangingly so you can make the same silly statement one more time? Go.
Okay, my point was not saying that necessarily saying that these laws don't come from anywhere. My point was that that's what you're saying about God. You're saying the God doesn't need to come from anywhere because God has the exact same descriptors as these laws. They are unchanging, eternal, all that. Where is your God coming from then? That's my point.
Are you done, sir?
Yes.
Great. That's not what I said at all. I said these are attributes of the living God, because these laws of logic are eternal, they're unchanging, but they're not self-existent. They're not self-explanatory. And they sure as hell don't tell you where time, space, and matter comes from. So once again, let's try this one more time, sir. Again, laws of logic are eternal, universal, unchanging, but they are contingent upon something other than themselves. They are abstractions of a mind. Would you agree, sir, the laws of logic cannot be touched? They cannot be measured. They cannot be weighed. They cannot be tasted. Would you agree with that, sir?
Okay, in this case of these laws that we're talking about, no. Not any more than your God can.
I'm sorry, sir. Can you touch the laws of logic? Can you tell me how much the law of logic weighs? Can you tell me what unit of measure you are using to actually measure the length of a law of non-contradiction? Can you tell me what the law of the excluded middle tastes like?
I literally said that these laws, no, they can't. That
Great.
was what I said.
Guess what, sir?
But
guess what, sir? Now you've just admitted, again, your fallacious nature of your argument. God is the source of these laws. In order to have these laws that are eternal, universal, and unchanging, you have to have an eternal, universal, and unchanging lawgiver. You see, here's what I pointed out to you, sir, that these laws exist. You agreed with that, do you not?
I do agree with that.
I have a question.
Hang on a second. These laws do not change over time. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Great. So now you have to have a cause for these laws that does not change over time and eternally exists. Because guess what? In the very beginning of the cosmos, in the beginning of the universe could not have both existed and not existed at the same time in the same way. So right there proves that the law of identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle were in play before the physical world came into existence. So, once again, my God has always existed. The Bible says that he is the Alpha and the Omega, the Aleph and the Tav. He is the uncaused cause. You cannot have an infinite regression, sir. That's illogical. Once again, you'd be claiming logic of which you cannot document. Excuse me one moment. My dogs need
Did my internet die, or did he cut off there?
He didn't cut off at all. I didn't hear any cut off.
All right, he's gone. I'll take over. Someone had a question?
I did.
Yeah, what's up? Defense Counsel for Christianity subbing in.
What? Sorry. I'm confused.
I apologize,
Go
man.
ahead, high viscosity. What's your question?
It's defense of Christianity or theism?
Okay, I was gonna ask Batman if he's familiar with the block universe model and as to why he rejects it.
It's not in the Bible.
Blocking first model. Oh, you'll have to ask him. I don't know.
In the Bible.
Yes, well, I was assuming since he's a science teacher, he was talking about he would be familiar with the block universe model and how it doesn't accept the concept of a Big Bang and so on. And you know, his presupposition that this is the correct scientific model, yeah, it fits with his belief in the Bible and so on, but just leaving the Bible, I wasn't wanting to tackle the religious issue because I think that's a term.
You have to ask him. I'm a Catholic lawyer. I do not bother myself with trivialities like science.
Batman, have you returned?
Okay, well, I mean, I'll happily defend the concept of religion to any atheists while he's gone. In terms of
Batman Returns.
Oh, shit!
Oh, shit.
For the win.
Oh, that's pretty good.
okay, so my argument is that
Oh no, form has sunk to new lows.
No, man, I already read it.
I kind of
There's
love
much
it.
new lows for you, dude.
God is a personification of the unknown.
Okay, Karen. Be sure to talk to my manager about it.
I was going to say God is a personification of the unknown, and so anyone who's saying that there is no God is saying there is no unknowns for them. They're claiming to be God.
Hmm.
I think
Personification of the unknown. I wouldn't really put it that way actually,
yeah.
Yeah.
because you can
Well, just because you don't put it that way, you don't get to define God for me, do you?
No.
Let
Okay,
him
sure.
respond.
But
I know.
In order
I'm having fun.
There we go.
hold on. I'm telling you from the theistic worldview, from the perspective of the Abrahamic, specifically Christianity, and in that we can know God to an extent, His nature, what His will for us is, and what His commandments are. So we can know some things about Him, but like the ocean, you cannot fully comprehend Him. Like you can go to the ocean, you can swim in it, you can see it, but you can't comprehend the whole thing, the depth of it, the breadth of it, how much volume of water is in it, everything that lives in it. So to an extent, yes, there is mystery there.
So
I agree with you.
God is every